Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. With me in studio is Captain Ron, the uranium industry's dark, dirty little secret. That's what we're going to talk about today with filmmaker Lizabeth Rogers, who traveled to South Dakota to follow a story about uranium contamination, only to discover that the problems flow much farther and runs much deeper than they could even imagine. This documentary, Hot Water, tells us the stories of those impacted by uranium mining, atomic testing, nuclear energy, and so much more. This is going to get deep. We hope you guys learn. We hope you guys stand up and let your voices be heard. But we're going to talk with Lizabeth Rogers here in just a second. Now, Lizabeth, with an over 30-year career in the entertainment industry, Hot Water is the third of Liz's documentaries, following a multiple award-winning films such as On Sacred Ground and Catching Dreams. I've been told Liz is a fearless activist, a grandmother, which I can't believe that, who loves talking on polluters and those who threaten the health of babies she loves. So this is going to be a great interview for us to get to know Liz about her activism, her great passion for helping others and helping this planet. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, Liz Rogers, director, writer, producer of Hot Water. Liz, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Oh, your studio audience is fabulous. What a warm welcome.
Well,
oh, my goodness.
Well,
Thank
you deserve
so much
it.
for having me.
You deserve it. I watched the documentary this week, and I have to say, I'm a big documentary fan, so I can be somewhat of a critique. And there was nothing that in the documentary that I was like, they could have done better, because you've done your research, you've done your travel, you got the personal side into it, and you made people think. So thank you for doing the documentary in the first place.
Thank you.
So you like I said, you've been in the industry for a while, in the entertainment industry.
Right.
So what led you to make the film Hot Water? I mean, there must have been something that triggered that idea.
Well, there was, and beside the obvious question that I did end up asking myself, how the hell did I start this process? How did I get myself into this? Which I think every documentary filmmaker does at some point. But we were working on my first film that I produced, On Sacred Ground, right, which was a film that we did in South Dakota that dealt with Native American sacred sites in the shadow of the Sturgis Harley Rally. Now, that seems like a pretty broad juxtaposition, but it's a good little film. And one of our interviews was with Charmaine Whiteface, who is a biologist. And it has a group called the Defenders of the Black Hills. And she was talking about the Black Hills and how there were all of these abandoned uranium mines in the area, and they were contaminating the groundwater, and that people were getting cancer and dying. And I thought, well, this is just ridiculous. I have to check this out. So I started doing some research and did a segment 4 on the subject for On Sacred Ground. And the deeper that I got into it, the further and further it went. And I ended up pulling that segment and saying, I have to go back and I have to do a whole separate film just on that subject, because it was so far-reaching, and I was so naive. Oh, good Lord. I came into town on the 5 o'clock turnip truck when it came to this subject, because once I got to South Dakota with a crew and we started researching it, I thought I would come home and do a film on it, and it would be released a year later. Well, 7 years later, I ended up covering most of the United States and areas that I had no idea were contaminated, and it's far worse than anyone ever suspected. So it's a long explanation to a very, very short and simple question, but On Sacred Ground started it. Charmaine Whiteface started it, and the problem is ongoing. And there are dozens of areas that I couldn't even begin to cover and didn't cover, regretfully, in this film.
Well,
some that are extremely emotional and very
right.
difficult to process.
So, I mean, it kind of gave a little inclination of where you started. So, how did it unfold? Because you could have stayed, with the local people in North Dakota, but how did it start unfolding to want to like explore even more? Because you could have just focused on that area.
Yes, I could have. The difficulty came in that I realized that it was just not just a Native American issue. It wasn't just on Pine Ridge Reservation. This went much deeper. And Native American issues are often and largely ignored by the general public.
Right.
So had I done a documentary film just on the issues in that area and affecting Native Americans in that area,
Right.
it would have been largely ignored, and people like me who are relatively well educated and informed and involved have no idea that our water can be polluted with this stuff. And I had to get the word out. So as soon as I started researching it and finding out the kinds of areas that this problem exists in, there was no question that I had to keep going and to try to find a way to communicate and educate the public on this issue of radioactive contamination in our water supply.
And what I noticed, if anybody that of a certain age or maybe just a movie buff, the movie about Aaron Brockovich, it kind of reminded me of the interviews that you were doing, because there were so many people that just started coming out of the woodworks of family members dying and young people dying, babies dying of cancer and tumors. How did you, how do you keep the separation of the emotions? Because I couldn't imagine interviewing some of these families that have lost loved ones, and not just one loved one, but multiple loved ones.
Yeah. Some of these families have just been decimated by cancers. And there were times that I handled it better than others. I did choose to include one incident in the film where I did lose it, where we all cried interviewing the Poirier family at Pine Ridge Reservation that had been just completely obliterated by cancers. And the sorrow and the anguish in this family at the generations that have been affected, and the babies who are sick and that have tumors. It was just too much. I mean, we didn't have a single crew member, from the director of photography, Kevin Flint, who's extraordinary, to the boom man, to the assistants, we were all sobbing. It was just, we were a mess. And then other times I can suck it up and be a rock and handle it. It's definitely not easy, but what steeled me to the greatest degree to pursue it and to keep going was the fact that I ended up losing a grandchild. I ended up losing actually 3 grandchildren during the 7 years I was working on the film.
Jeez.
And one of them to cancer, and one to birth defects, and another one to an unknown, I will say birth defect, but an unknown issue that could have been caused by any number of things. And any human being who has faced that kind of anguish and grief, it gave me a stronger spine. It frankly really, really pissed me off that we are so naive and so arrogant and so blind to what we are doing for the sake of energy and for the sake of having unlimited amount of power at our disposal, and our greed, I tell my grandkids I'm going to have "Don't Get Me Started" tattooed on my forehead.
But that's what we want you to do. We want you to get you started.
That's right.
I just got very, very angry, and I lost all of my fear. That was the ultimate thing. The last of my fear and my filters just went out the window.
Right.
And I said, I will take you people on, and as those of you who know me know, I am unfiltered both in language and in style. So I don't know if you have a 5-minute delay on your broadcast, but I'll try to remain ladylike.
No, please, you don't have to.
Yeah,
Not on this show.
This is fine.
Not on this show?
Not on this
good.
show. You can do whatever you want.
I said, I'm going to take you assholes on, and y'all can just get out of my way because you don't scare me anymore. I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. I went to every one of the sites that I researched, had contamination leaking into our groundwater going back 50 or more years.
Wow.
50 or more years.
That's a lot of
So
And there are
generations.
areas that, even in Los Angeles, the water from the Colorado River runs through 16 million tons of radioactive mill waste
Jesus Christ. Wow.
sitting on the banks of the Colorado River in an unlined containment in Moab, Utah. And it's been sitting there for over 50 years, and it's still leaking.
Jesus.
There's 16 million tons of radioactive, highly radioactive mill waste sitting in a pile, and you can see that pile on Google Earth. If you go to Moab, Utah, which is the gateway to Arches National Park, there's 1 million tourists a year go there. And if you go to Google Earth and look at Moab, Utah, on the northwestern side of town where the Colorado River snakes around, you're going to see on the opposite side of the river what looks like a huge dirt pile. That pile is 16 million tons, 110 acres, 33 feet high of radioactive mill waste.
Jeez.
And it's been sitting there for 50 years. Now, the arsenic levels in the river in front of that pile are 1,000 times the level needed to kill fish.
Holy shit.
And the mining that's right. And the mining company that left it there, now this is Atlas Mining, which is a Canadian company, and back in the day, of course, they put up a bond, got the permits, promised to clean up the mess. They mined the ore, did everything that they wanted to do with pulling the ore out and making the money. And then when they realized they could not clean it up and they could not get it out of the water, they just filed bankruptcy and walked away. Now, this company used the same assets to cover the bond for several other of their mill sites, so they were under bonded. So, of course, it had to be turned over to the Department of Energy, and now you and I and every other taxpayer in America are paying for the cleanup. And they are hauling that crap out of there, one trainload car at a time, to a spot out in the desert 30 miles away.
30
miles away, yeah,
to
get it away from the Colorado River. Yeah. But it's going to take till, let me say, they're trying to accelerate it to get it cleaned up earlier. But the projected cleanup date is 2027.
I'm sure you're very excited about the new administration who comes in, who seems to have a very, very positive look on the EPA and cleaning up the environment, right?
Oh, my God. Oh, don't even. Oh, God,
don't get you started. Right.
Don't even started. Holy crap. Well, I mean, this pile, because it's unlined, they don't know how far underground all the contamination has gone. So they don't know if they're ever going to be able to get it cleaned up. And the thing about radiation in water is that there is no way to get it out of the water once it's in solution.
Really? So, like,
There's
most
no
people
way to clean it up.
because most people would say, "Oh, it's just going to get diluted. You know, we don't have to worry
Right.
about it." That's not true.
Right.
Right.
Not with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, dilution obviously reduces the amount of exposure you're going to get per liter of water. But the problem is that there is no safe level
Right.
of radiation. There's if you check the EPA's website and you look at alpha radiation in water, they will say that their goal limit is 0 because there is no safe level. Their action level right now is 15 picocuries per liter, which only means they'll let you have that much in your water before they have to do anything about it. And there is nothing they can do about it other than bring in other water sources, truck in water from other sources. Now, they are talking about now raising that limit to 30.
It should go down to 1.
Right.
Right. 0.0001. Yeah.
Does this drive you crazy
Now,
that this isn't on the front page of the news, that not everybody's talking about this? Like, they've got this stuff off. I haven't seen anything
would say
about
off
this
the grid.
outside of her documentary. There's nothing about this going on. It's not like people are talking about this.
Yeah.
Nothing on the news. This is what we should be talking about as a society, and nobody is. Right?
That's right. That's right. I mean, the LA Water, I will say Water Department, the Southern California Water Management, knows and is aware that there are increasing levels of radioactivity at the water intake at Lake Mead.
Good thing I don't drink the water.
Yeah, I mean, they're aware of it. They are treating it as though dilution is the solution for pollution, to borrow a phrase. But that is not the case, because alpha radiation, its effects are cumulative. So it's not water soluble. I mean, it goes into solution, but once it gets into your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, its damage accumulates over time. It doesn't disappear. So the effect may not be immediate. You know, when I was growing up in Santa Maria, when I was a kid, I asked the audiences at my screenings, I say, when you were growing up, how many people did you know who had cancer? And you guys are young, babies.
Ish, yeah.
But I'm in my 60s now. When I was a kid, we didn't know anybody who had cancer.
Right.
And now?
Everybody.
Young, it's really like 1 in 3 or something crazy.
Yeah, young, old, doesn't matter even age anymore.
Right.
Used to be just old, got cancer. Now it's not.
Right. So, and there are many things that we know or that we suspect that cause cancer. Right. There are things that we're discovering that cause cancer. And obviously all of those things should be researched and dealt with and avoided and mitigated and fixed. But this is one thing that we know beyond the shadow of a doubt causes cancer. There is no question. We know alpha, gamma, beta radiation. We know these things cause cancer. And we have to do something about it. Now, these uranium mines are contaminating aquifers. In the film, we covered all of the nuclear testing at the Nevada test site, which I am completely gobsmacked over our idiocy over this. Now, when we dropped the bombs on Japan, 2 small bombs by today's standards, a couple of 100,000 people were killed immediately because of the blast. But in the months following, 250,000 people died as a result of exposure to that radiation and fallout.
Right.
From 2 small bombs by today's standards. We blew up 1,000 nuclear weapons in Nevada.
1,000.
And we kept 1,000. And we kept doing it until 1992.
And I remember, I don't know the exact terminology, but in Japan it was like 1,000, and then here it's like, what was 1,400? Like, so there was a huge difference.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the
like size and the
whatever
The exposure,
the exposure,
the REMs, the REMs, the measurements on these things are incredibly confusing.
Right.
And I think that is why a lot of people just kind of tune out, because there are REMs and there are sieverts and there are becquerels and there's all these different measurement things and picocuries and curies, and I thought my head was going to explode. Even with all the years I spent working on this. So there are, let's just say normal background levels of radiation where you live in Los Angeles or where I am right now in Oregon or anywhere else in the country could run between 10 and 20 millirem per hour.
Wow. That's still quite a bit.
These measurements in the Black Hills where we took measurements were up to 1,400.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So they were extremely high. And this stuff is just laying on the ground right above an elementary school. and children are in this particular area in southern North Dakota and northern South Dakota, this particular area, there are people with tumors that are far, far beyond the national average. Families that have ranched generations, whose these families, their grandparents were settlers and 100 plus years ago.
Right.
In that area, and died of an old age. And then their children died of old age. And now these kids are on this property who had been born around this same time period, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on. And 5 out of 6 of them have cancer.
Jesus.
5 out of 6.
Or all of them have cancer. It's mind-boggling.
Well,
it's just mind-boggling.
Let me ask you this, because I'm also in the documentary and also in the movie, Aaron Brockovich, some people did not want to talk on camera, didn't want to participate. And I know you talked about a farmer that you said, can we take a sample of one of his cattle? And he said, no, now you're touching my pocketbook. So this is what it's all about. It's all about money.
I'd love to help, but I'm not going to help at all.
Yeah, it's the money to clean it up. It's the money to actually do it in the first place for the company, and they're paying off, I'm sure, politicians. And now even the local people are saying now, but if you show that my cattle have
then
radiation,
I can't sell any of it.
I can't sell it. So what was it like? What was it like when you hear that and you see that affecting him and his community? Did that even anger you more to see, or did it make you have some sort of sympathy of going,
oh man,
it
was a mixture, honey, it was a mixture of everything. It really was. It was a mixture of every one of those feelings. It was frustrating. I got angry for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. I understood on another level. Right. But here's a rancher who had a cancerous tumor removed, and he wasn't willing to do what he needed to do to try to stop it. So I don't. What do you say? I felt at that point that I ended up just kind of reporting it. I felt like I was just reporting it, that there was nothing I could do.
Right.
At the end of all of this filming that we did, Lizabeth produced with me, and she and I spent many, many, many hours poring over footage and looking at this and trying to find a solution, trying to find action points that one would put at the end of a normal documentary.
Right.
You know,
Right.
do this, call your congressperson or whatever, and we just kept coming up with nothing. You know, it was very, very difficult to know really what to do, and this was really one of those polarizing situations where I thought, you have cancer,
But you don't want to.
and you won't let me test the meat, and it's
Remarkable.
yours.
Yeah.
What the what? You know, what? What?
Right. And one thing that this is, you know, you had a great speaker on was Congressman Dennis Kucinich, and how did you bring him on board? Because sometimes politicians, they don't want to be part of anything controversial, and this is very controversial.
Well, she said she's working with her wife. Right?
I know, but
Yeah.
you know, he may not. He still
Right.
just because the wife's there doesn't mean he wants to publicly
Right, that's right.
put his name on
That's
it.
very
true.
true.
That's true.
That's very true. But I have to say, Dennis Kucinich is not afraid of anything, and that is one of the magnificent things about Dennis. He has been a fighter on this issue for many, many years. There is a nuclear plant in Cleveland where his district is and was when he was in Congress. And that plant is leaking and has cracks and is questionable operation and, pardon me, and is on the banks of the Great Lakes. Now, this is another extremely tenuous situation when our largest sources of fresh water in the country are the Great Lakes.
Is this
And
in
these
Perry?
nuclear
Is this in
plants
Perry, Ohio? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Cleveland.
Yeah. Yeah, it's east of Cleveland. Yep.
Yeah. And,
It's right on the water. Like it's a just the position. You know, it's like that, and then this beautiful lake. It's creepy.
Well, and they require huge amounts of water to cool those rods, those fuel rods. So every nuclear plant has to be on a huge source of water for cooling.
Right.
So if there is ever a leak or a problem or a meltdown, the first place that is going to get contaminated is the water.
Awesome.
So, and most people, I've found even people who are fairly well plugged into environmental issues had no idea, really had no idea that nuclear fuel does not produce electricity. It just produces heat, the same way burning oil or coal does. And a heat creates steam that runs the generators, that run the transformers that create the electricity and so on. So they have to be on a source of water, not only to boil for the heat, but to cool those rods. So if something happens and there's a leak, and there are always leaks, the first thing that's going to get contaminated is that water. Now, one example of this is the meltdown at Fukushima.
Well, Liz, hold on one second, because I want to take a quick break, because I want to give you, because this people that really don't realize that this has affected not just Japan but everybody in the Pacific Rim.
Right.
So hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to take some sponsors. But if you're just tuning in, this is Lizabeth Rogers. She is the producer, filmmaker of the documentary called Hot Water. You can go to zerohotwater.com and check it out, or you can just watch it on YouTube. But we're going to get more in depth on some of the disasters that's happened for nuclear, Chernobyl, Fukushima. There's a lot to talk about. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet.
Captain Ron.
And we're going to come right back right after this message. Be right back. You suffer from anxiety, from depression, maybe even chronic pain? Well, listen up. Truth Be Told is going to tell you about a breakthrough program built on over 100 years of therapies used in America's returning veterans to help you successfully overcome PTSD, anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. The secret proven in study after study. Music therapy. The effects of music are nothing short of amazing. From strokes to PTSD, music has been shown to improve the quality of life. Now, one of the latest music therapy programs being used in America's veteran hospitals can be yours to experience for free, at home, and to help your own anxiety attacks, pain, and depression. Or just relax after a hard day. It's called Whole Tones. It takes music therapy to a new level. This revolutionary program makes use of specifically designed frequencies that have been shown to stimulate your body's natural healing power down to a cellular level. If it works for battle-scarred vets, can it work for you? Well, experience it for yourself for free at sweetwholetones.com. Like Tony Sweet, that's SWEET. Go to sweetwholetones.com. Now enjoy the show. Do you suffer?
United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, sets the standard for most food supplements and are used in over 95% of all vitamin and mineral supplements in the world. The problem is that these products have never appeared in any living tissue. They're created in laboratories and are not recognizable to the body's metabolism. Grown by Nature products are different because they use renatured ingredients, proprietary blends of essential vitamins and minerals, with cofactors of proteins, lipids, and complex carbohydrates. Over 50 studies have been conducted on renatured nutrients, and over 20 have been published in peer-reviewed journals proclaiming their superiority. As a result, Grown by Nature vitamins and supplements are now recognized as simply the best available. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 and order your Grown by Nature products today. We are what we eat, and since we are of nature, we should eat foods in their natural form. Only Grown by Nature offers a full line of renatured nutrients. Call 877-817-9829. That's 877-817-9829 because not all products are grown by nature, but they should be.
All right, we're back. This is Truth Be Told. I'm Tony Sweet.
And Captain Ron
And
here.
Captain
I thought you were
Ron.
going to say it. All right.
You have a better voice for that. But we're talking to Liz Roger, or Lizabeth Rogers. She has a amazing documentary she, I think, put out in 2015 called Hot Water. You can go to zerohotwater.com. It's about the nuclear waste and uranium contamination that not just affecting certain areas of the country, but many areas of the country and world. So, Liz, thank you for being here. We appreciate you on the show. We really do.
Thank you so much for having me.
She was talking about
I'm very
Fukushima.
honored and happy to be here.
Good.
I was going to say you were talking about Fukushima, and then we rudely cut you off.
I know,
Yes, Fukushima. Oh, boy. Well, when Fukushima exploded, melted down in 2011, of course, everyone knows that story and has seen the film of the tsunami and the after effects of that. The explosion that happened, the spent fuel from those reactors are kept in cooling pools, basically in the attic and upper level of those reactor buildings. So when the generators failed and the overheating started and the water started boiling and then there was this explosion, it created this chain of events that led to the complete meltdown of the reactors. And then since then, because they have had to keep huge amounts of water running over this melted fuel, there is no place to keep that water once it becomes unusable. So if you look at aerial photographs of that area, you will just see thousands and thousands of huge tanks, blue tanks, that is storing highly, highly radioactive water on site.
Oh my God.
And that's not a big country either.
Right. It's just water too. It's
Right.
not even like it's uranium. It's
Right.
water. That's no good.
Radioactive water. And there are, because there's water, the water table under that reactor is flowing through the cores that have melted down through the bottom of the reactor containment. There is groundwater running through that and out into the Pacific. So there are estimates of 300 million tons of water flowing into the Pacific every day.
Hey, Tony,
Since
do they
that
ever have
meltdown.
earthquakes in Japan or no? Never?
Pardon me?
He asked me if Japan ever has earthquakes, and I think every 100 years maybe.
Oh, man.
It's like one of the most...
every 100 days.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, look
We
at
just had
these could
another-
burst easily.
They have sixes. I mean, they have sixes all the time. I mean, regularly. Earthquakes are no big
These
surprise.
tanks could burst.
I mean,
and
that
then,
is the Ring of Fire.
Yep.
Japan is on the Ring of Fire. It was created by earthquakes. The island of Japan is created because there are earthquakes. It's on that.
So aren't all these tanks in jeopardy of an earthquake then, obviously?
I'm sorry?
Wouldn't all these tanks be in jeopardy of being affected by an earthquake?
Oh, potentially, I suppose. But the point is that there's water running through that melted core, groundwater, all around the site of all of those reactors. That's just flowing into the Pacific. I mean, it's just happening as we speak now. So I just read a story on Snopes trying to debunk the issue of contamination from Fukushima reaching the West Coast, and how a spokesperson from the EPA said that dilution would solve the problem. The Pacific is huge. There's no way there would ever be any radiation from Japan reach the West Coast. And it was actually on the news a couple of weeks ago that we do have cesium-137 from Fukushima showing up on the Oregon coast right now.
Wow.
And that is a huge expanse of water. Now, Fukushima has absolutely no way of stopping it. There is no solution. They have they have tried an ice wall, actually digging down into the earth and injecting a frozen brine to try to create an ice wall to stop the groundwater, and that failed pretty much immediately. So they have no solution, none. There's just no solution.
Again, this is another thing that's been out of the news. Fukushima, when it happened, was all over the news.
But they talk mostly about the earthquake itself and,
Right.
the tidal wave.
We haven't heard anything on this in at least 2-3 years. Nothing.
Why do you think that is? Even here with the North Dakota, and why do you think our government, our local government, and our national government are not talking about this when this is one of the biggest crises that we have?
I think because if it's not going to kill you today, it's an imminent threat. I think that it's not. It's the mentality of our news cycle, of our attention span. It's pretty simple. If it's not fast money,
right,
it's not gonna make the news. It's we have a very, very short attention span.
I guess if they were making money from the cleanup, then it would be different. But if they're spending money for the cleanup, then it's another story.
Yeah, who wants to hear that?
Yeah.
Right, true.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and what are they going to? There's no hope. There's no way to clean it up. It's going to keep going ad infinitum. It's just not ever going to end. So go on about your way, and chances are, 5 out of 10 of you, or whatever the number ends up being, are going to get cancer at some point in your life, and it could be from this exposure, or it could be from a uranium mine in South Dakota. It could be from when you were exposed as a kid, when you were on vacation in Nevada, and they were blowing up nuclear weapons right and left.
That's what I want to talk about. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to talk about 5 minutes of. I'm going to show a map of all the sites in America, and there's quite a few. That's just the actual sites, but then there's contamination sites too. But then I want to talk about, to finish it out, your trip to Standing Rock, because this is really, a lot of people are like, I don't understand why there's such a big deal. But now that if you see this documentary, you can see why it's such a big deal. So I'm going to show a map, and it shows every nuclear site in America.
Is this a nuclear plant? Is there?
Nuclear plant is there.
Correct.
Correct. There's 2 in California, Arizona, even there's one in Kansas, not too far from where I'm from, maybe about 70 miles. But but there's a lot, especially on the East Coast. There's quite a few, and the East Coast is another one that, there's a huge population almost around every single one of these nuclear sites. So, but there's also contamination spots. Can you talk about those? Because
I was pretty blown away when I went to the EPA and started pulling up these maps of these cleanup sites, and there's a lot of different classifications and types of cleanups. And I pulled up this map and started looking at cleanup sites, not all of which are radioactive, some of which could be oil spills, could be chemical spills, could be any number of things. And when I saw how these sites lined up with not only nuclear plants, which are also population dependent as well, so that could have a big impact on how those things are clustered. But looking at these sites, I thought I would never ever know that I had a cleanup site in my neighborhood if I didn't look, if I didn't do the homework. We have got to get our head out of the nuclear sand, out of the toxic sand, and start paying attention to what's going on around us with these sites that are poisoned, that are poisoning our water. If anyone thinks that this issue in North Dakota about the water, and it is about the water, is trivial, is incredibly naive. We are absolutely water dependent. It seems silly to say it. It seems cliche to say it. But our entire existence is water dependent. And we are scuttling every bit of our fresh water supply to fracking for oil, drilling for oil, contaminating the aquifers with uranium mining and other kinds of mining that release these chemicals and minerals and heavy metals into our water supply. We have to start thinking smarter about what it is that we're doing to our water supply. Now, I know your time is winding down, but the EPA's mission is to respond to imminent threat. So if you have a BP oil spill or the Dakota Access Pipeline spills and gets in the water supply, EPA is going to jump on it. That's an imminent threat. I interviewed a gentleman at the EPA office in Denver about the uranium mines and about the cancers in the area, and he said, "Cancer? Really? Prove it." And I stood there literally slack-jawed. I said, "Really? Prove it." And that's their attitude. Imminent threat. Now, if you're exposed to, you drink a gallon of this water, this contaminated water, you'll never know because there's no odor, there's no burning or stain, there's nothing that's going to impact you immediately. But 5 years down the road, when you have 4 different kinds of cancer, you have leukemia or kidney cancer or lung cancer or throat cancer or esophageal cancer, any number of things, and wonder where you got it, you would never know.
And I was telling Liz before the show, and actually before Captain Ron.
Dr. Captain.
Dr. Captain. He went to school. But in my hometown, I'm from a small town in Kansas called Granola, Kansas. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot. I mean, when I was a kid, there wasn't a lot of cancers. My grandfather had, ended up dying of lung cancer, but he smoked like 5 packs a day. But there was a point in the early 80s where all of a sudden, almost everybody, women, men, started getting breast cancers, uterus cancers, just dying. Even a cousin of mine died at 18 of leukemia. And I in my gut, I said, there is something that is, maybe not nuclear waste, but there was something that was leaking into our system where we was drinking this. luckily I got out of there a long time ago. But for the people that are listening, and I'm gonna put this map up one more time. If you're watching it on YouTube or live now, I mean, you're affected. I mean, you're every state, almost every state is.
You're only talking about the states. Don't forget, I want to mention this to Liz. This is an international thing.
Chernobyl.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief, Chernobyl.
Good grief.
All of these years after that Chernobyl meltdown, you still cannot fly directly above Chernobyl in a helicopter. And
wow.
Because if you're over the top of Chernobyl for more than 60 seconds, you're going to get radiation to kill you.
Holy. And how long is that going to last? For 1,000 years, probably? Or
10,000, probably.
10,000.
Wow.
Yeah, 10,000. Now, the concrete sarcophagus that they built to originally cover the reactor has since, of course, cracked and has problems, obviously. If you look at any concrete sidewalk or driveway, you know how long they last, and it's just a decade or so. So in the 25 years or so since that meltdown, that sarcophagus has completely deteriorated. So now again, the radiation that is coming out from the reactor core up into the atmosphere is extremely deadly. So the new sarcophagus that's being built is going to say the size of a football stadium, and it's a dome built off-site on railroad tracks, so it can be pushed over the top of the existing reactor building and cover it and enclose it again, and then that will be left for another 20, 25 years and to the next generation to deal with, and on forever and ever and ever and ever.
I just think, the human beings think we're so smart, and we end up creating things that think they're going, we're going to help society, and end up killing not just local, but this is affecting the world.
Yep.
It absolutely is.
And we're killing this planet.
Helen Caldicott said it brilliantly. She's an activist, doctor, and Nobel Prize winner for her work in this subject. And she said, we are dealing with a technology that requires us to be infallible. Anyone in this room who thinks they're infallible, raise your hand. How many of you are infallible? This technology requires infallibility, and we will never, ever be infallible. And I pointed it out in the film. We spent billions of dollars on a Hubble telescope that was out of focus. We had to go back and put glasses on it to fix it. The Challenger went up and with bad O-rings and it blew up. Our best scientists, the best of the best, did that work, and they screwed it up.
Wow.
How do we trust industry with nuclear power? How do we trust them? They are not infallible. They know they are not infallible. They are gambling. They are taking a measured risk, and they are gambling. And they're gambling with our lives, our health, and our health and our water. And I'm done. It's just not okay. It's not okay anymore. And with what we have at our disposal in the way of renewable power, sure, we may have to rethink how we use energy. Maybe we can't hog the grid all night long. Maybe we rethink how we manage the energy in our homes. Mm-hmm. We could do that.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a big deal, right?
We're all about excess.
Absolutely.
100.
Absolutely.
My great grandparents that came from Kentucky to Kansas,
probably didn't have power.
They had a lantern, or a fireplace to live by.
That's
Not
right.
saying that we have to go back to that, but you don't need every 5 TVs on and 5 computers on and every light
air
on the
conditioning
house.
blowing.
So we definitely can scale back. I mean, that's
absolutely. And now that we have gotten gone so far with solar energy
Oh, yeah.
and storage devices and such. There's a million things we can do to make improvements on how we use energy. And we're going to have to just rethink this. Now, pardon me, I know you're getting down to the wire, but I want to just say quickly that this nuclear fuel rods only produce enough usable heat for 5 to 7 years, enough to create heat to run those generators. Once they are done generating usable heat, they have to go into cooling ponds for another 5 to 7 years just to cool down enough that they can be put into dry storage.
Wow.
Once they're in the dry storage, they're still deadly for 10,000 years.
10,000 years. I mean, that's insanity.
So we
we'll be gone
get
then.
5 to 7 years worth of usable heat out of those fuel rods for 100 or 1,000 generations. 100 generations to be having to take care of it, babysit it, monitor it. It's just insane. It's insane.
That's like playing Russian roulette with bullets in every chamber.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time before one of these bursts. It's just a matter of time.
Yep.
Oh, my God. Well, Liz, I don't want to say that we're out of time, but we're out of time. And you have been... will you come back? And,
yes, I would love to.
And if you're ever down
kidding?
here...
Are you ready? Oh, man, you can't shut me up.
Oh, that's what we love people like you, though. Yeah. You know, there's a few that you're like, and you're like, no, talk to me.
Right.
Do you have any other projects coming up that we can look forward to?
Oh my gosh! Well, there's a couple of them. One has to do with the Appalachian Trail, and it's a very interesting story, and it's actually about my brother and his son who hiked the Appalachian Trail, and in the midst of it, discovered that my nephew had very serious cancer, and again, cancer. And
do you ever do anything happy?
You know, I need a comedy. I need a day spa. I need a pedi and a mani and a massage. I'm an idiot, you know. I'm just an idiot. So, and then of course, then I went to North Dakota and had to sit in a blizzard for 2 days, and I don't know. I'm an idiot. I'm a lunatic.
Well, we're glad we have people like you in the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for this. Yes.
Oh, the crowd went wild again.
See?
All right. Well, thank you. And we'll talk to you soon, all right? Liz Rogers, everybody.
Anytime.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
It's nice how our audience stays so quiet till the very, very end, and then when they say goodbye, they clap very nice. It's very nice the way they do that.
You know, you guys did a great job over there.
Appreciate that.
So we want to thank Liz for being with us today. Go to zerohotwater.com, and if you guys want to watch it, you can watch it on YouTube, but you have to pay $2.99. But I have to say, it's worth $2.99.
Please, yeah. And this is valuable stuff. This is a good one. This is something that matters. This is a good one.
And, you know, this, what I'm going to say is, like, you know, this is something that you're like, it doesn't involve me. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I mean, like she said, even in California, we have, like, how many, 18 million people in Southern California? And it's in the groundwater. I mean, we could be drinking this shit. So, all right. So stick around. We have another show for you guys. If you have a sexual problem or
even if you don't,
or porn addiction or whatever, you know, that's what Captain Ron's watching right now.
That's right.
We're going to be right back, but it's going to be a great show. So don't go anywhere. This is Truth Be Told. So we'll see you soon. Hey, thank you for listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Make sure you go to our iTunes page. Just type in Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. Listen to us on iHeartRadio. Again, Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So please support our sponsors and make sure you listen to us every Friday right here on Universal Broadcasting Network from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good week.